our distinguished guest today from the 56th Component Maintenance Squadron, Maintenance Superintendent, Chief Master Sergeant Francisco John Stone. We also extend a special welcome to our commanders, chiefs, first sergeants, and friends and co-workers joining us for this special occasion. Major Blackman, the floor is yours.
All right, I'm going to use this. Just because the air conditioning is going on. And I have to look at my notes. Haven't had a lot of time to prepare today. It's about, what, 3 or 4 weeks ago that you dropped this bomb on us. So working at Jiffy Lube back in, 86, 87, 88, working there for a couple of years. It didn't take long for young Andy Maroulis to realize that even, being the regional manager for Jiffy Lube, which someone else who worked there after him became the South Florida regional manager, he could probably do more and have a bigger impact on the country, if he joined the military. A couple of his buddies were hanging out, and I'm not exactly sure how they had the idea to go to the recruiter, but the Navy was hounding him and probably some of his friends too to join the Navy, being a Navy town. But something about that uniform. So hanging out with his buddies, instead of going to the Navy recruiter, fortunately for us, he decided to go check out the Air Force recruiter. And 2 out of the 3 of them that went that day ended up serving the Air Force. So off to Lowry Air Force Base in Colorado to go to a 10-month-long avionics tech school. So for those avionics heroes in the room, you know what long tech schools are like. And Sergeant Maroulis is the only one remaining from his first tech school class, the longest standing. So definitely a long career and a successful one, from that day. First station, RAF Upper Heyford in England, working F-111s. Now, Cold War going on at the time, F-111s, ALQ-131 pods. For some older distinguished folks in the crowd, you're nodding your head. You understand what those letters and numbers mean. That airplane no longer in the Air Force history. Not to say you're, worked on a piece of history, but a part of our history as well. State-of-the-art equipment at the time during the Cold War, protecting, our airplanes going into harm's way. Right off the bat in 1990, a year or 2 after coming in, Airman of the Month. First learning experience at Upper Heyford, lots of TDYs, and you mentioned one in particular, heading off to Turkey. Now, some things go through your mind when, as a young, person, you're overseas, you're stationed in England, and your only point of reference for Turkey is some movies you've seen, and some of those movies represent Turkey as a dark, dark place, third world, and just kind of scary. You end up, in Turkey and finding out it's a beautiful place. Ends up there only 5 days after Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. So probably didn't get to enjoy the beauty of Turkey like you wanted to, because they went right to work. Stayed for 5 years at Upper Heyford. Actually did a consecutive overseas tour. It's probably a good thing, because the only other base you could have gone to would have been Canada, New Mexico, the only other place flying F-111s at the time. But right about this time they merge avionics career fields, and he ends up being able to work F-15s, and so he chooses to go to Eglin. And you get there in October of 2004, hit the ground running, and this is some of the things that year. Troubleshot and repaired test station spectrum analyzers that others could not. Saved over $1 million, and partly because of that and a lot of other things in your record, you're recognized as Squadron Airman of the Month, May of 1995, and Maintenance Airman of the Month, August of 1995. Also awarded the Desert Warrior Award. I don't know if that brings back any memories, but exceeding the requirements during Operation Southern Watch there. During this time, he also deployed to Dhahran, Actually stayed in the Kovar Towers, and later when it was bombed, actually knew some folks from his avionics shop that were in the towers. Selected as the 33rd Maintenance Squadron and 33rd Fighter Wing Maintenance Pro of the Quarter in '96, and the 33rd Fighter Wing Maintenance Pro of the Quarter in '98. He was the #1 radar team leader on the APG-63 system, so some other folks who worked that system. ComSec Responsible Officer, got a ZD and an Outstanding during an ACC ComSec. About this time, he's putting on Tech Sergeant, deploys to PSAB. Get this was some of the things I pulled out of his records that impacted me. Stepped into an unmanned shop, unpacked pallets to set up the shop, got the test stations up, fixed and verified 11 LRUs in 18 hours. He was a day shift pro super, led his team to capture the 363rd Air Expeditionary Wing Sharp Team Award, and then was later NCO Maintenance Professional of the Quarter, January to March 2002. 2003, moves over to QA at Eglin, Product Improvement Manager and an avionics inspector. He puts on Master Sergeant up there in QA. Also gets orders to Kadena, and as normal, they hire a replacement because they know he's about ready to go. Then the orders get canceled, but they've already got his replacement there, so they give him this new assignment that just been created, Activities Inspection. His chief says, quote unquote, figure it out. Well, he does. He's recognized as superior performer in the 2005 ACC UCI, best seen in 2.5 years. As you know, working up in QA, you take the lead for prepping the group and prepping squadrons for inspections. Senior NCO Maintainer of the Year in 2005, 33rd Fighter Wing Senior NCO of the Quarter in April to June of 2006, out of 620 senior NCOs. Now, I mentioned those personal achievements because something else that Sergeant Maroulis mentioned to me is about the time when he got the orders to Kadena, and then the orders got canceled, he started volunteering for all kinds of special duties. He was trying to get an assignment out of Eglin, but instead of just, putting his head down and kicking dirt because he couldn't get an assignment, he still was getting personal achievement awards and personal recognition. It kind of shows the kind of person he was at work. Something else that popped out of his records, Air Force Enlisted Village annual 4th of July picnic. We put that together. And then you're back to Avionics Flight Chief after working in QA for a couple of years, still at Eglin. Organizes the Air Force Enlisted Village Labor Day barbecue. Serene Bite Avionics reliability was rated outstanding because you're now working in avionics flight. 6 flight members received Superior Performer and instrumental to Eglin's overall excellent ORI. And that work gets you recognized as the Senior NCO of the Year for 2006. Your EPR that year says you're #1 of 57 Master Sergeants in the Maintenance Squadron and #5 out of 208 Master Sergeants in the wing. Clearly at the top of his game. The very next report, for the 3rd time, he's recorded for organizing events for the Air Force Enlisted Village residents. And then right after that, he's the only avionics flight in ACC, leading that flight. He's the only flight in ACC with no findings during an LSEC. And about that time, he's promoted to Senior Master Sergeant. And then, another bullet in your report, organized the Oktoberfest for the Air Force Enlisted Village residents. So that kind of caught my attention. What is all this working, Air Force Enlisted Village? Come to find out that during that time working at that base, putting all those events together, you caught the attention of Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force #9, Chief Binnicker, who also is a huge supporter of the Air Force Enlisted Village. So you were becoming quickly well respected by that chief, and it's recorded twice in his records that he was personally praised by Chief Binnicker. Not only that, but I have a letter here that he asked me to read during retirement. Senior Master Sergeant Andy Maroulis. Dear Andy, On behalf of all former Chief Master Sergeants of the Air Force, I want to express my sincere appreciation for your 2 decades of faithful and honorable service to our country and to our great Air Force. It is often hard for one to judge his own accomplishments in life or in a profession, but others benefit and profit greatly from such dedication and hard work. That is the beauty of the will to serve. It should be evident to you now that your contributions over the past 20 years have touched far more people than you know or realize. You have inspired others to follow in your footsteps as a professional. As a trainer, mentor, supervisor, you have helped create the future of our Air Force. I know of no greater reward for anyone than that of personal satisfaction. Jan joins me in wishing you and Jody all the best of health and happiness on your occasion of your retirement and to your continued success in the future. Warm personal regards, James C. Binnicker, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, number 9. That's pretty impressive. Something else that's impressive, 15 years at Eglin. Show up as a senior airman and leave as a senior master sergeant. Over 9 personal awards. That's just 9 that I quickly counted. Well, he finally gets orders to Luke in 2009 to come here to be the avionics flight chief. And quickly become recognized here. Chief Master CMS Senior NCO of the Quarter, January to March of 2010, where you've led the Air Force's largest F-16 avionics intermediate shop, 1.6 thousand LRUs a year, 6 AMUs supported, 25,000 training sorties a year. You know, as people progress in rank, typically the personal achievements taper off and the achievements of their flight, squadron, group, and wing take over. And you finish up your career with helping this squadron, this group, and this wing reach untold heights. CMS Maintenance Effectiveness Award at Air Education Training Command last year. Our Maintenance Group Medallion Award last year. Those are some top heavy-hitting awards that can't be done without an avionics flight carrying their load. Now, I know you like to hear very much, you know, what's not to like about Arizona, Luke Air Force Base. I would have liked to have retired here. But moving to Alabama, where his wife Jody has already gotten a job there at the Air Force Language and Cultural Institute on Maxwell, and moved the family there earlier this year, Riley and Jackson. So he's anxious to get his house packed up next week and get on the road and get back there, where he's going to take his first summer off since he was 16 years old. Now, I mentioned, you know, his family's already ahead of him, and there's something else kind of important to note. His EPRs reflect a drastic change in 1997. His EPRs go from, well, not quite firewall 5s. Something happened in 1997, and after that, every single one of them is firewall 5. And the first time you're time and grade eligible for a senior, you have a wing commander's endorsement. So what was it that happened in 1997? Well, he got married to Jody. So she takes a little bit of credit for turning this wayward, brand new staff sergeant around about 15 years ago. And he would have been a bum on the street. So she says. We'll never know. But clearly you've had an impact on your family, and your family has had an impact on you. And although Jody couldn't be here today, she sent me a letter that I'd like to read on her behalf. Now, I can't do it in a Southern accent. I cannot do it in a Southern female accent, so you'll have to add that as I read this. Good afternoon, everyone. With this letter, I continue a long-standing tradition in my marriage to Senior Master Sergeant Andy Maroulis, doing the opposite of what he tells me to do. Andy didn't want a big retirement ceremony. He didn't want any fuss, and he certainly didn't want speeches. But although you'll hear about the kind of NCO he is from others today, I'd like to talk about the kind of man he is. When I met Andy, he was a brand new staff sergeant just back to the States from England. I was at a nightclub and I saw this guy laughing, doing shots, and dancing and just cutting up. He looked like he was having more fun than anyone in the club, and I had to meet him. Now, for those of you who can't see, you may have, I'll put this down up here, but Andy is this guy right here in this purple shirt.
It's like pink, sir.
I'm pretty sure it's purple. Oh, and that's a can of Busch beer, if you can't see that either. Not that we're dating him or anything. Here's another one on the far right-hand side. Anybody see that? He's got a cool pose there, pointing off into the ceiling, into the distance. He looked like he was having more fun than anyone in the club, and I had to meet him. As I got to know Andy, I was more and more impressed with his integrity. What you see is what you get. He doesn't say much, but the things he says are true and thoughtful. Andy goes about his work and his life, doing the very best all the time, never slacking, always willing to help, and even more impressively, making it look easy. There have been many times in our personal and professional lives that he could have been angry or resentful or at least upset. However, the times he showed those emotions were few and far between. In accepting himself the way he is, he manages to always accept situations and people the way they are too. Instead of spending time complaining or wishing things were different, he chooses to be the example of how things should be. His calm, steady leadership has been a blessing to us as a family and also to the Air Force. He's quietly set the example for countless young airmen under his supervision, and he's done it by being the airman that they could aspire to be. Always fair, always showing integrity, always there when you need him. I am grateful as a wife, mother, and part of the Air Force team that I've had him for a role model. Congratulations on your retirement, Sergeant Maroulis. We love you, and we couldn't be more proud. Hurry up to Alabama, where we are missing you lots. Sincerely, Jody, Riley, and Jackson. So after 23 years, 6 months, and a couple of days here or there, you know, I think Chief Binnicker and your wife said it better than I could, and that's why I took, you know, those speeches and added them, you know, to my words today. Chief Binnicker has said, "Your accomplishments have touched more people than you now know, and you have helped create the future for the Air Force." And your wife has said, "You've been an example to countless young airmen and to your family." And there's no greater reward than the personal satisfaction you have from a job well done. And that's what we're here to do today, is to say thank you. And it's my honor and pleasure, on behalf of the Air Force, to say thank you for a job well done. And here in front of everybody, I speak for everybody here, that we will miss you, and thank you for your service. Ready to retire? All right, let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise